learning centre for the community to find out more about how they can get involved. Now, we're in a situation right now where the most recent polling said 73% of people in Britain support an immediate ceasefire with no conditions. And yet, almost every single politician that you see on the news equivocates completely and refuses to put any force to stop Israel's bloodbath. We need to change the situation where those 73% of people feel like they can do nothing. We can transform that majority who want all the bad things to stop and just not be on the TV anymore into a majority who can start to actually change these conditions. But we need to get out there and have the conversations on the doorstep and speak to people who've not had a chance to speak about Palestine before. A few weeks ago, I was speaking to a neighbour who just burst into tears, and I had to just kind of like hug her while she cried because no one had spoken to her about Palestine before. She just felt alone, and she was watching a genocide on her phone screen. And now she's knocking doors. We can change the situation, but we need to get out there and speak to people who feel completely disempowered and tell them that once we build a majority, we can change it. This city, this country is absolutely complicit in the genocide, but we also have the power to at least contribute to stopping it. If we're honest, the people that are going to defeat Israel is the Palestinian resistance, but we can at least slow the bastards down. Victory to the resistance. Long live the Intifada. On the 28th, there's a TUC back, there's a trade union congress, the organisation of all the trade unions, is backing a workplace day of action. Now that means that your unions should be saying, providing you with support to go and speak to colleagues in the workplace, have a protest outside your workplace, or you can come here, literally just over there by the statue, at 12:30 on Thursday, and join other workers in saying that we will not be complicit in genocide, that we will stand against apartheid, and that the trade union movement in this country stands with the Palestinians. If you work anywhere near Temple Meads, over by Glass Wharf, also at 12:30, there's going to be a mini protest. But if you want to find out more, I've got leaflets. I'll be stood under there for the next 15 minutes until I dissolve in the rain, and you can get some leaflets to find out more. Or you can email Matthew at PCS, that's Papa Charlie Sierra, .org.uk, and ask me and I'll email you back on what's going on. All right, like I said, long live the Intifada.
On that note as well, for any students here, we are having a meeting point to come down to College Green for the workplace day of action. It'll be posted on our Instagram at Bristol PalSoc. One last speaker. I know it's raining. Thank you all. We have Professor Rebecca Gould, who is a writer and scholar, author of Erasing Palestine, Free Speech and Palestinian Freedom. Hey.
All right, thank you to everyone for coming out here in this rain. So I'm going to be talking about a friend of mine in Gaza, a 14-year-old girl named Lujayn, who is an amazing writer. I've been getting to know her over the course of the genocide. Actually, she ended up, my book reached some people in Gaza, and so we've begun this correspondence, and a few of her writings about what she's experienced and seen in her displacements have been published already. But just a few weeks ago, she recently wrote a story about a ride in a taxi through southern Gaza, and the people that she talked to, and what the kind of the human cost, the human toll of this genocide. So I'm going to read from the story. It's not been published yet, but it's going to be published very soon, so you can also see it online somewhere soon. It's called, she wrote in Arabic, and together with one of her relatives, they translated it into English. It's called Taxi, the Story of a People. During our search for shelter in southern Gaza, we decided to head to a field hospital after hearing that a medical delegation had arrived from abroad. My mother was in desperate need of treatment for her abdominal pelvic injuries, but there was no diagnosis to explain her condition and no medicine to ease her suffering. We left the small room where we were staying in the sand dunes of Rafah's Mawasi area and walked for half an hour through the dunes. My mother finally spotted a car coming our way, and we flagged it down, grateful to catch a ride. As we settled into the back seat, the story of the taxi began. Next to us sat an elderly woman, likely in her late 70s, cradling a little girl no older than 4. The child's gaze was fixed on my mother with an intensity that surprised me at first. In the front seat sat the driver, with a man next to him holding a small boy, and on the same seat sat a young man. The driver and the man next to him were locked in a heated debate about the escalating events and who was to blame. The young man, who was holding a falafel sandwich wrapped in a piece of paper, joined the conversation. He unwrapped the sandwich and noticed that the paper was a map of the world. He pointed to the tiny distance between Palestine and the rest of the world and said how the entire globe seemed incapable of sending the aid needed to save the people of Gaza. The little boy sitting next to him said, "Those are short distances," causing the young man to give a quick geography lesson on borders and distances. The elderly woman remarked, "You know more than most your age." The young man said, "My father taught me the geography and history of the world." His voice was heavy with pain. The driver asked him, "Where is your father now?" "I don't know," the young man said. "We were displaced from Jabalia, me, my mother, and my siblings. We don't know if he was captured or killed." The woman said, "May God return him to you safely. You're better off than I am. At least you still have hope that he's alive. Both of my sons and their families were killed when their tents in Han Yunis were bombed. All I have left is this little one," she said, pointing at the little girl. I took out a biscuit and tried to give it to the little girl, but she refused, shaking her head. My mother took the biscuit and gently placed it in the girl's hand, saying, "Take it, my dear." To our surprise, the girl accepted it from my mother with a big smile. The elderly woman smiled too and said, "You look a lot like her mother." At that moment, I understood why the little girl was staring at my mother. She saw in her the face of her own martyred mother. Suddenly, the entire car fell silent as the sound of a massive explosion shook the ground. Everything on the road, if you could call it a road, came to a halt. The path was mostly covered with tattered tents and makeshift stalls selling goods, with a long queue of people waiting to fill up their containers with water. After a few minutes, we moved forward to find out what had caused the explosion. A missile had struck a group of young men who had been searching for an internet connection. Their bodies were scattered around the ground. Their only crime had been trying to find internet connectivity. We passed the scene heavy with sadness, grief, and bitterness. The elderly woman asked, "Where are you all from?" The driver said, "From central Gaza." The man beside him said, "I'm a 48 refugee from Fallujah." The young man said, "I'm from Jabalia." The elderly woman added, "I'm a 67 refugee." My mother said, "I'm a mix of all of you. My family were 48 refugees who fled their small village in Gaza and 67 refugees who went abroad. I returned to Gaza in 2008. Now I live here." The elderly woman asked, "Why did you come back?" My mother answered, "If I could turn back time, I would make the same decision to return. There's no place like my homeland." And I think that's something that occurs again and again in her stories and in so much of what we read from the Palestinian people. They are not leaving Gaza ever. As I reflected on the journey, I realized that the small taxi had so many burdens. Each passenger had their own story of pain, yet they were united by one thing. They had all been displaced by the war that began in 2023. The image of that little girl, her searching eyes and lost expression, lingered in my mind. In the faces of others, she was searching for the mother she had lost. That taxi ride encapsulated the struggle of a nation occupied since 1948 and continuing to this day. And just to tie, I'm just going to close here, but to tie it into the theme of the universities, I want to say this is what our universities should be supporting, cultivating brilliant writers like this, rather than working with arms manufacturers and investing in Israeli companies. Thank you so much.
That was very powerful. So just on a quick final note, I have some announcements to read and I'll let all of you go. So Bristol Palestine Alliance are organizing an Elbit Filton rally on Saturday, the 14th of December, a public meeting on the UK's abuse of the Terrorism Act on the afternoon of Sunday, 15th of December, and the next Bristol March will be in solidarity with Gaza, will be on Saturday, the 21st of December. Thank you to the stewards, speakers, singers, and everyone for coming in solidarity with Palestine, especially in this weather. If you do ever want to be a steward, please find Chuck. There she is. And yeah, thank you everyone. Have a good day.
حكم